the first thing people want to do is grab a book and go look at all these metrics and just start picking them. So instead of doing that, you figure out what your big, hairy, audacious goal is, and then work backwards for what it might be in 10 years, what it needs to be in 3 to 5 years, and then what are your 3 to 4 or maybe 5 key initiatives, and then what would be a number associated with that, and bring that back down to 1 year, and then back to quarterly, and then back to your week and your day. So how can you do that? And those are the main metrics that you track. And then in addition to that, what are your processes and your functions?
Hi everybody, Gavin Coyle here. I'm the Gaffer back again with another fantastic guest. It's Rob Williams, and Rob is in the area of construction. He's in Memphis, and he's really a guy that you need to get to know if you're looking to scale your business within construction, because he's got some brilliant insights and some great information to share with us today in terms of, you know, his experience with building massive companies in the States and the pitfalls that people come across on a regular basis. And he's going to discuss with us today what are those pitfalls and how he can solve those issues, and how he's seen companies going from a couple of million maybe up to 10 multiples of that. Rob, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Great to be here. Boy, you make me sound great. Thanks, Gavin. This
Some people say I oversell it sometimes, but no.
Sell me, go for it.
No, I've been buzzing for yourself because we obviously had a call a couple of weeks back, and it stuck in my mind for a couple of days afterwards, some of the discussions that we had that resonated with me. But I'd like you to give the listeners just a sort of a quick overview of who you are, your career, and like how did you get to where you are today, if you don't mind, Rob.
Yeah, I'm Rob Williams, and I was a contractor for a long time in Memphis, Tennessee, well, really in Mississippi, in that area of the country where we were. I grew up in it. I was born into the construction business, so started, with the trash bag in hand, cleaning up the job sites, doing anything that Dad couldn't find anybody else to do when I was in back there. There were no labor laws that would not let you work as a really young kid. So I got my start early, which that was great. Worked a lot more in the summers. Didn't work really that much while I was in school, but in the summers did a lot of that. And then went out. We were a volume home builder. We became more and more volume, and I really kind of made partnerships with Dad, and he said, we can be a partnership. You go do your neighborhoods, you do that, and I'll be half of it. So basically, I really started, I think one of your questions, how did you start? I started building custom homes first before I did the volume. I found somebody at 23 years old. I had just finished graduate school, and somebody let me build them a custom house as a 23-year-old, It's like, wow.
But put a handbrake on that. Like, how do you get to be a 23-year-old, walk up and have the confidence, number one, the bravery, number two, but also the background? How did you actually sort of open that door? That's like your first customer story, isn't it?
Yeah, I was fortunate, having grown up in it. Even in high school, we had a digitizer in the early 1980s, where I would count things, do every little, it was this giant board because we had blueprints that smelled in the blueprint room and the old fashioned way. And we count every little piece. And we had Betty, this little lady, she was a trim carpenter. A little old lady showed me how to do everything from the ground up, and she could do everything with her hands. So I was fortunate to have that background and do those custom plans. And I'd sit in there for days and do it. And I'd bring it into Dad, and he would have a pencil and a pad, and in 30 seconds he could say, you're a little high here, you're a little low there, and a little. It's like, wow.
You had a real mentor behind you.
Yeah,
your father.
He would catch me that, and then they would send me to the field, and they sent me on the cleanup garbage crews, mini summers, jackhammers and other things, trying to get me to go to another industry,
Yeah. Well, your father obviously was a great man. He obviously gave you the skill set, and didn't hand it to you. He made you work for it.
Well, and I think he tried to push. Well, I don't think he told me. He tried to push me out to become a lawyer, do something different, and I almost became an international business. That's actually what I thought I wanted to do, and then I came back into it after I got a little taste of it.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
talk me through the how did that project go? The self-built project for when you were 23 years of age.
Oh, it went great. I was there. I really did not know what I was doing that much, but I was there. I watched every single. It was the only house I was building. I didn't have a whole, a
Portfolio.
whole neighborhood of houses. I did. I had a lot of other lots right there, but I watched everything happen, and the workers didn't know that I didn't know what I was doing. And I had been out there, and I mean, I watched every single board go into that house and do
Wow.
everything, and just learned a lot, and constantly just cleaned. I had a broom, and back then we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have anything. You just stayed on the job site, and some days you waited for people all day long that didn't show up, and you just
Yeah.
cleaned and you cleaned and you looked
Yeah.
at things. And so the house turned out to be a very solid home. But
Yeah, but what about the budget? How
oh, the
did you
budgets.
just yeah,
Well, see, I had been in the budgeting. Well, I told you high school
yeah,
and college, and I was a real estate major with a master's in business. So the budgets and the numbers, I had that part
yeah,
down. I was
yeah,
a big Excel nerd, you know.
yeah. Well, like we talk about on the podcast a lot about risk management and risk profile, and the numbers thing comes up quite a lot. People not knowing their numbers, not keeping
Yeah,
an eye on the numbers. Whereas,
yeah,
I think you might be a little bit humble there because the numbers was the first thing, and I'm sure when the homeowner handed you the contract,
yeah,
they were thinking the numbers as well and saying, yeah, look, at the end of the
yeah,
day, he's got a bit of background from his father. He'll get the
yeah.
job done, but he's also going to get the job done at that price.
Right, right. Well, and I did have Betty, the Betty Golden. Her husband was the concrete subcontractor, and she was a superintendent for us, and she was a little old gray haired lady, but she was
Yeah,
tough,
yeah,
and she showed me. She would look over the budgets with me, even though I had my own agreement and partnership, but Dad had the big company, so
yeah.
I was able to use his
Leverage.
people and his resources
Yeah.
to.
Or it's brilliant. A great story.
It was say a joint venture, really, is what those settings were. So
Yeah, but he allowed you to go out and make your own mistakes and go out
yeah,
and do your own thing. And then,
and I made plenty of my own
but you
mistakes.
have to, don't you?
A lot of
Just
yeah, because I
minimize it.
made the budget. You didn't say how did you stay on budget, but I had no problem making the budget. I don't know that I stayed on the budget, especially when I was young. Bright shiny objects. That was one thing.
Yeah,
I put way too many extras in there, and they would add up at the end of the project. It's like, each thing was just a little bit, but when you have them at every little stage,
yeah,
then I would give and take. And
yeah.
I was bad about that. I was not good at keeping on budget. I get
So,
excited.
so fast forward. Then, did you just that's your first project, and then
Yeah,
you
that's my
just went?
first try. A couple of years later, I partnered with four of the biggest builder people in our area, and had a volume neighborhood, which that one actually did not go that well. Either we had some things go well because we had too many chiefs in the kitchen. It was basically the biggest five names in the industry, and we partnered on a neighborhood, and
Wow,
but it was interesting, and
everybody
there were
reckoned it was
many
their
reasons.
project.
It was more of a location issue that it didn't work out very well, and we ended up flipping it later to somebody that did rental properties. But
Okay. So lessons out of that. Too many egos at the table. Too many
yeah,
people thought it was their project. Wrong location.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was funny. It was in our system. You have back then. You had a computer system of the sales, and there was one street. We were across the street. We were in a different zip code, so the realtors' numbers wouldn't show up. It was that. So we did a lot of promotion, but we did TV advertising and a lot of these other things to bring people out.
Yeah.
But so that was the very early years, So
So what
and
was lesson? Go back and do it yourself, and not go into partnerships.
no, but it was not defining the roles, and that's where being a coach now, it was yeah, too many chiefs in the kitchen, not really no definition of who exactly is going to do what. It sort of was there, but the expectations, and we didn't have company metrics. We had budgets, but we really didn't have any metrics. Now we talk about lagging indicators and then leading indicators
Yeah.
as you're doing. So we had the financials that would come out way after, but we didn't have
Touch points.
touch points. Yeah, we might have
Yeah.
we did maybe in marketing we did have that, but we didn't have that in other ones. We had traffic counts and things like that coming through there, and the advertising, because we were spending a lot of money on advertising, but
Yes.
we didn't have the modern scaling up Rockefeller habits where you're measuring everything.
So talk to me about that. Like, what does that look like today in the utopia world of metrics? So, if you were to do a quick KPI plan for me, what does that look like?
Well, you starting at the top, it's great. I'm actually doing that with a couple of people right now. You John Ratliff, who got me into the scaling up coach, he was best friends with one of my business partners on a different in an aviation company I had. But he got me in there and he said, tell your story backwards. Find
The
find
exit.
your goal, your end goal, your purpose, your BHAG. What is your big, hairy, audacious goal? And then go backwards. So now I
Yeah.
like to start when we do metrics. The first thing people want to do is grab a book and go look at all these metrics and just start picking them.
Yeah.
So instead of doing that, you figure out what your big, hairy, audacious goal is, and then work backwards for what it might be in 10 years, what it needs to be in 3 to 5 years, and then what are your 3 to 4, maybe 5 key initiatives, and then what would be a number associated with that, then bring that back down to 1 year, and then back to quarterly, and then back to your week and your day. So how can you do that? And those are the main metrics that you track. And then in addition to that, what are your processes and your functions? So you have those four, if kind of going across the line, and then bring back, that's your big macro picture, but you need every function on there. Function is a job basically, but we like to call it a function. There should be one person with that, and each function has a lagging and leading indicator, so you'll know that each person knows what their number is. Everybody should have a number and what that is. And then in addition to that, we call that a face chart, functional accountability chart. And then you can have a pace chart where you have a process accountability chart. So define those 4 to 9 or 7 to 9 processes that you have, and have a leading and a lagging indicator to see what the goal is on that. So you know how each one of those processes are.
So that interests me because you're probably reinforcing what people should be doing anyway. Within that KPI, would that be fair to say? Look, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like when you talk about leading and lagging indicators for an individual, give me an example of a lagging indicator for an individual.
Well, lagging indicators usually always something on your
Okay.
financials, your profit, your loss, your expense. What's that dollar number, or what's the balance sheet number? What is it? Is it the amount? Depends on what your job is. It's the CEO. What's the net profit? Maybe the sales manager. What is your sales volume, or maybe what is your gross
Yeah.
margin? If it's the operations guy, the lagging number might be your could be your gross margin. How are you on the not the very bottom line, but the gross margin that you
Yeah.
want
Or the
to
quality.
make.
Or the quality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The
Yeah.
quality. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, that's brilliant. And
yeah.
I haven't
And then
really.
bring back then, but you don't know that until after the financials are there. So what can you do about it? You just do better next time. So you need something
Yeah.
that you have to think about. What is it in
Love
your
it.
job that you can say this would happen much earlier, like we were talking about in the volume sales, and ours back then was the traffic coming through the houses that would predict our sales. But
Brilliant.
so, and then we
Yeah.
would dial our advertising budget up or down when we wanted to hit those sales numbers.
Brilliant. And do you compound your data at the end of it? Like, do you give a sort of a score rating and say, by the way, I've just compounded your data and you're well below the average
Yeah,
business?
yeah. What you do is if you're talking to a certain individual on there, you have a job scorecard. So when you hire somebody, you have those metrics, and you should do that before you hire somebody. I just went through that, but it was I don't want to get too much. Let me try to be generic. I don't want to give anybody's
No,
secrets
don't.
away or private
We
stories,
don't want
but
to get sued.
yeah. The friend of mine, he hired somebody, and we talked about getting that job scorecard, but he's like, oh no, he came in and said, oh, I hired him already anyway. I said, but you didn't tell him what the metrics were, and you weren't doing. And actually, he just let him go this week. Because you
Wow.
can hire an A player, and
Yeah.
if you don't know what those metrics are, and to tell them what's going to be expected of them, and
Yeah.
we were working on, let's get these in place first
Yeah.
and then go out and hire that person, because he may not, when you get the metrics, he may not want that job anymore, and you want
Yeah.
an A player, or
I
maybe it's not challenging. Something you can turn an A player into a B or a C player just for not having the right metrics, and not having that defined, or having other B and C players in there. I'm actually going through that some right
Yeah,
now,
that's
because
brilliant.
there's like, I'm really good, but he's not, and that's the best way to lose your A players, is to
Yeah.
allow B and C performance in there, and then they feel like it's not fair, and they're pulling all the weight, and they feel like they want to
Yeah.
go somewhere else.
Like most of the people that will listen to this podcast would be small to medium sized construction companies, scaling up, probably heading past the 2 million mark, but like ultimately trying to get up around the 15 million mark, maybe.
Yeah.
And like,
That's about what I did in my truss manufacturing. I had a wall panel and truss manufacturing plant, and we had framing crews, and so we started off at about 2 and built that up to about
built it up.
15
Yeah, it's kind of a sweet spot. The
million.
15, isn't it? The 10,
Yeah.
15 is kind of a sweet spot for that type of sector and sort of the size, unless you want to start getting into group territory and start, segmenting some of the business. But I'm just, I'm blown away by this blueprint that you have like,
Yeah.
I'm thinking to myself, well, why would you not have this in place? Like, if people talk about having a mentor and having, mentors are good, don't get me wrong, but mentors kind of give you their version of a life experiences, as opposed
Mhm.
to, by the way, I'm going to give you, me and you are going to develop an organic based KPI plan, is what I think you're saying.
Yeah,
And me and you
it's
are going to
yours.
measure that on a month by month basis. Like,
Right. And it really needs to be yours. I mean, some of the worst advice that I can remember, and I remember my friends or even clients taking this advice, is you have people in the community, and especially some place like Memphis, that we're spread out in Mississippi, so that we as a normal person might know somebody that's a billionaire or something. They're in our circles, and then they'll take advice from these people that have hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank, and they think that's the best advice. Well, that is like some of the worst advice that they'll give a small time guy. They're in a completely different situation, and I see these guys listen to that advice
yeah,
and those numbers, and take that, and they just dive into it. And
yeah,
looking back, especially at the time, I felt not good about it, but not enough to really oppose them. But looking back, I see how horrible that went, because their financial situation was not the same. The cash flow
yeah,
needs, I mean, to the people that we're talking about, cash is king,
yeah.
and so I love Cash Flow Story. That's a program that we take people through. And Alan, who wrote the program, he says, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity,
Yeah, yeah.
and cash is king.
That's
And
true.
then John Ratliff answered, and valuation is emperor. So valuing. So I got a fourth thing to add to
Yeah.
that.
Oh, brilliant. Like, I totally resonate with where you're going, and the starting from um, the starting point is the exit point, and work re-engineer everything back to where you are. I think that's
Mhm.
really what you're saying and that's what you do. And what type of companies would you work with like, what kind of construction companies do you work with?
A lot of the ones, I'll say construction industry, because a lot of the companies that were more like, not my general contracting, but my framing and what we call subs over here. I think in Australia they call them tradies, and I
Yeah,
don't know what the term is
yeah, yeah,
in yours, but the middle guys, that's most of the industry. Uh, that seems to be the best in the valuation, be able to put a stronger valuation. It's a little bit harder, I'm finding, for the contractors, because I was originally going after the general contractors
Yeah.
only.
Yeah.
And even though they had the larger dollars, they're not as traditional of a business, and that contractor, they're not as repeatable and scalable, and that they can be taken by somebody else. A lot of times they have to be taken over by internal people or something that's they're not as reproducible and able to take them in. They don't have as much strategic value as somebody else will. There's two values when you're talking about the valuation. You have financial value and you have
Yeah.
strategic value. And even when we sold our home building business in 2000, in 99 through 2001, I can tell you a little bit about what went up to that. But the multiples, I didn't understand the difference. I thought to get a higher value, they just thought we would grow faster. But things you own in your company, especially those subcontractors, they may have a system, a process, or a patent, something like that, that makes them valuable to a big company. So you might be a $3 million company, that maybe would have a $5 million, $10 million exit value at the most. And John Ratliff has one of those main stories that he sold one for 75 million. It was in the construction industry because of their management. A big company had been working on trying to get the system and processes, and these people had no idea that the value of their company was not the financial value. It was, they wanted their spreadsheet that managed the properties,
Wow.
and sold it for
Yeah.
$75 million.
I love that you said that because like a plumber, for example, like a database is so valuable.
Yeah.
Something like that has to be serviced every 6 months, whatever it is, like a gas boiler or whatever that is. Like,
Yeah.
you know, uh, it blows my mind that people don't have even, there's even free software to manage, customer database
Mhm.
with regards to servicing of equipment. And that's like, if you felt that you weren't going to pass on the business to your siblings or whatever else, and you wanted to sell it, imagine getting to the 30-year stage of working in the service industry and not documenting a database.
Right.
I I've heard that, like, it just blows my mind that,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
there's your gold dust right there, because basically no need for a salesperson. Sorry to cut across you, Rob. No need for a salesperson. Here's the database. Go to work.
Right. A lot of the times, usually what people are buying is either their customer base, and it may not even be their system in there. It might be the system, or they're buying their process. They're buying their people, their customers, or their process.
Yeah,
Which a process might be a product. I say process, but that might be. It's usually one or the other. And the one unique thing is the owner of this business never knows that that's their, what we call Rembrandt in the attic, their secret thing. They don't know it's
remember
up
doing
there. So have you heard that
that. No, I
Rembrandt in
haven't
the
heard it.
attic
That's very good.
concept? It's simple. Do you mind if I tell that real fast?
No,
It's
go
a
ahead. Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, the so if you and I are both looking at a house, and there's a third person over here, and you go in that house, and you look at it, it's great, and it's $1 million home. That homeowner's fine. You're like, oh, I like the pool in the back. It's kind of, maybe I'll even, you decide that, Gavin, you're going to pay $1,050,000 for it, or pounds, or wherever you are in there, or euros, whatever these
Yeah.
days. I go in the house and I say, yeah, it's okay at 950,000. Well, I go up in the attic, and in behind the wall up there, pull up a sheet. There's a little sheetrock. We'll pull up that sheetrock. Buried in the wall, there's a Rembrandt in that attic worth $14 million. I happen to know that because my sister was an art major. So, and so I got there. So what do you think I'm going to pay for that house? Who's going? When we bid it, I did not. I was the lower one. You're bidding against there. The homeowner has no idea that that's in there. And as we bid, you bid 1 million. You were valued the house at 100,000. Well, now what? How much do you think I'm going to go up to pay for that house?
Yeah. Whatever it needs to be in order to get that rampant.
Right. And see,
Yeah,
what happens is almost never when we come in there, they don't know they have a Rembrandt. It's usually
yeah,
common sense. And the typical attitude is that everybody does this. Oh, I'm sure somebody else has this, because it's usually something pretty simple. It's
yeah,
not that much. And it may even be customer service. It may just be a better process that if that can be blown up and taken by a $1 billion company when you are a $5 million company, it can have much higher value. But I'm actually not encouraging people to step out of the company. The point, though, most people's first reaction is, well, I'm not interested in selling my company.
yeah,
But the best way to run and operate your construction business is to operate it as an investor. And you are an investor, because when you are bidding, you always need more than one bidder for your company if you're in that. But you are the primary, you're the first investor to go against. So if it's a financial, if you have financial only and your health is good, well, you probably don't want to sell it, unless you're just sick of it. You want to do something else. Um, why would you take a multiple of 4, when you can run this company 4 times profit EBITDA?
yeah,
If you're making $1 million a year, why would you take 4 million for it?
yeah,
You would just work it out. You're going to make a lot more money. But if at what point everybody should know, well, what is my number? Because there may be
yeah.
somebody that just knocks on your door one day, and says, "Hey, there's this big number." It's something that you don't know.
That's a out of this podcast. Even if people take that away, the number. What is your number? It's amazing to me the amount of people. I love that conversation with people. So, what's your number? What
Yeah.
do you mean? What's my number? What is your number? What's your exit number?
Yeah.
And they're
You say,
like, they
well, what
don't, they
about my
don't.
people? Well, share it with your people. What's the number? Put that in your number.
Yeah, but when you say it, when you, it doesn't matter whether it's a crazy number. It doesn't matter. It's your number. It doesn't have to be tangible. It doesn't have to be linked. It's a number that's true to you, that you believe that's my exit number. And when you start, I think it's like manifestation kind of. If you start talking about your number, then you start thinking more strategically about your business. I think. Can you resonate with that?
Yeah, right. And it's amazing. People don't realize the growth that they can have. And now the trend, at least over here, I guess it is in your area of the world too, but is to build a good, what we call a platform company. And then you see these small guys, regular guys, are building a good system and process. And then they buy some of the other companies around when they know their numbers. So they become an investor, and then they bring on, and when you add that up, and when you do, if you go from say a 10 million company, is really not $10 million revenue or even sales value is not considered economically that's like scalable to buy. So the same profit picture at that size may be worth 4 or 5 times EBITDA. But when you get to 100 million, something like that, well, then the economies of scale for those investors to come in and do the research is a lot better. Well, the number might go to a 12 times or a 10 times multiplier. So just the fact that they became the same quality of a company and put all of them together made their number go up. That's the big trend in what's happening
In the
is
industry at the
the
moment.
formula for the private equity.
So, would you suggest if I'm a little old Gavin Coyle roofer, that if I have ambitions to scale the company, that the best way to scale it would be to buy another roofing company within the.
No, not first. The first, it's get your sandbox and figure out what your sandbox is going to be, and become that platform company that we talk about. Get your systems together. So there's a certain level when you would want to do it, but before you have the platform, don't buy another company. I see that too. So the
Yeah,
opposite's like they buy it with no plan, and it just falls apart. So no, that's not the first step. That's like well down there. You've really got to go through the process. That's a much later step to
so
buy another company.
whereabouts is that on the whereabouts is that on the trend, on the curve? Where, like, year five, 15 million
It's
turnover?
not years. It is. I mean, I've seen it very early on. It is when you really get your systems and processes and your metrics together. you've
momentum.
got to get your house
Yeah.
settled first. So clean up your house first before you can go do the other ones.
Yeah, and try before you try cleaning up somebody else's house that you might
Yeah,
inherit because it'll bring down
right.
your house. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really good information. I like that because I've heard recently entrepreneurs make very rash decisions off the cuff, and that sometimes they work out and they get great success from that. But a
yeah,
lot of times they actually don't work out, and then it becomes a problem that they have to deal with, that they have to spend time, energy, and money to try
right.
and fix that. And you spoke earlier on about, that guy that just took on somebody, like, had to do it now and get it done, because there is that um, inbuilt entrepreneurial switch that goes, "Oh, I have to just get this done and move on to the next
Right.
challenge."
Yeah.
And this guy was kind of basically saying there's a whole philosophy about slow down and make sure that you go through a very measured, slow process when there's a high risk decision to make.
Yeah. My dad used to tell me that the best deal you ever make is the deal that you did not do. So, in other words, avoiding a bad deal is the best deal that you're ever going to do because it can take you down and put you out of business and end everything. So,
Wow. Yeah.
so turning a deal away is the best decision that you will ever make. There will not be a deal that you make positively that was a smarter decision as saying no.
Yeah.
And
So
I've heard that. He probably heard it from somebody else because I heard it verbatim from somebody else
no, it's
who
brilliant.
probably didn't quote dad, who's quoting somebody else.
So you're in the construction space. Your father had a very successful business. You had your own success in your own right. Then you had sort of this kind of epiphany to say, look, I think I can help the small to medium construction contractors scale their business. What type of scale are we talking about? How much? What's the dollar value if I was to get involved with Rob Williams?
The dollar value, I'm working on that. And really to take it on that you really need $1 million of profit or up. And whenever I say a number like that, I'll take somebody else on. Like just recently I had a company that was over 10 million in revenue and they don't have that much in profit. But so I'm trying to figure out, I told him, I said, you can't afford me. It's like, it'd be great. I really want to work with you. So I'm working in a small way and I'm coming up with, a new product. Like it's a community where I can do it for free to have people. It's called Scaling Up Construction. Not trying to be, promoting it here, but if you go to that domain, it'll go to this group where we have discussion boards. So I'm creating that, and it's a free space right now. And then I'll have another one that you can work it. So it's a community, and it's more in the masses. I'm not going to be coming out to the business like I do with those other. I can only work with, 3 or 4, maybe 5,
Yeah,
one-to-one really active companies.
I can imagine the capacity to implement that sort of blueprint must be very challenging for one individual like
Oh
yourself.
yeah, it's great, and I really get into it. It's exciting. I get excited about it, and it's just I feel like it's my own. And also, I can't stand the stress of it because I stay up at night now too. It's not just theirs. Theirs comes back on me. You know,
Yeah, but
when they mess up,
like
I lose sleep.
it's very powerful because like you're de facto sort of non-exec director partner in the business for 6 months or a year or whatever it
Yeah, or
is.
well, it's a mini year usually. Yeah, we want that to go on for. I mean, if you're growing yourself to sell, I mean, you need to give yourself at least 3 years before you sell to clean up the house and get everything
Okay.
the way you want to run it and the way that somebody wants to do it as a speaking investment banker, and all those numbers are different, and you
Yeah.
you just have to get those processes defined and the scoreboards align and get that history and make sure you're keeping your gross margins up and not dropping them because most companies are not buying sales, they're buying gross margins, and if they see that gross margin percentage fall
Dropping.
off,
Yeah.
yeah, then
So
it's not going to go well.
what would be the the common denominator challenges? Is it ego? Is it lack of processes? I'm just thinking, is there quick fixes people could take away from the podcast today that they could say, well, look, I'd love to have Rob on board in a year's time when I'm making $1 million net. But is there something people could be doing today to start, putting the housekeeping in place?
Oh yeah. Um, it's a process, as I'm thinking that, I can't give you a list of things because there's so many of them. I mean, in a lot of the bookshelf I have, most people will probably be listening. I don't know if they're listening or watching, but behind my head, I have, scaling up in Rockefeller habits, usually starting with the Rockefeller habits of getting your business and your rhythm in place. And then I use a scoreboard. I use cash flow story is where I usually start with people, because get your people, strategy, execution, and cash straightened out. Those are the 4 major decisions you have to do before you can scale. And your people are the most important, but you got to start with cash, because without cash,
You don't have people.
you don't have oxygen to breathe. You can't go a day without any cash.
Yeah.
So fix that first. Understand your numbers. That's the biggest thing that growth happens all the time, is they don't understand their cash cycle. What are your payables versus your receivables, and then what's your inventory and work in process? That money's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
Is it a gap? I have people call me all the time and say, well, I'm having a cash problems, but I've got $2 million more business this year, so we're really going to be going up. And say, well, okay, well, tell me about that. They say, well, it's government jobs. Well, it's like, government pays really slowly, don't they? So yeah, they pay a little bit slowly. How do you pay your people? Oh, I pay my guys in 10 days. Like, okay, now let's kind of look at that. It looks like you probably need 200,000 to 300,000 more of cash just to be able to complete those jobs.
Yeah.
Do you have a lender, an investor? How are you going to do that? It's like, I don't know. I didn't think about that, Or some people have businesses, and these are the ones that actually scale better, where they get paid up front. A lot of remodelers and things these days, they're getting those upfront deposits. It doesn't cost them anything.
Miles, I don't understand why people don't introduce more milestone payments into their structure. Yeah. If you're good enough, you're good enough, and honor is great, but it doesn't have a metric to cash flow.
Yeah. Well, the opposite can actually get you in trouble too. If you get paid too early, what we call is robbing Peter to pay Paul, is when we use profit first to separate your bank accounts. So there's money when you are a contractor and you get paid early on those jobs and you put it all in one bank account. You see hundreds of thousands of dollars or maybe millions of dollars sitting in there, and you think that's yours to spend. That is not your money. That is for the materials and the subs.
Yeah. And
there's only a portion of that is left for you to actually run your company.
Yeah. Brilliant. Rob, I have to say, I could talk to you all day, because I seem to be pulling more and more stuff from you, but we just don't have the time. But if people want to get in touch with you, I know that I think you have a podcast coming up, your own podcast.
Well, I've had a podcast for a long time, Contractor Success Forum, and it's still going on. The other 2 guys, that was with my bonding agent and a CPA, and I was in it the first 120 episodes. But now I have Scaling Up Construction, and it's more of a community where it'll be. It actually has classes. I'm launching it right now. So if you go to that domain, it will forward you to my About page. It's free right now, but I'm going to be building all the courses, questions, and answers that you can get to that. You can please get in there. And what we really want is, at least 10 or 20 people that will be having discussions at all times, because I'll be there to answer. And then this is a free group, and there'll be a paid group or something for some of the people that really want to get into a different level. But that is where to go to.
What is that domain? What is that domain, Rob? Is that a website?
Scaling Up Construction. And I just pointed it this morning. Yeah, .com. Sorry. This morning, I just repointed it to the About page of the group. So what I'm it's a platform that has discussion, and it has classes that I can teach, and it has a little gamification. We'll do some things. I'll be giving some free things away.
Brilliant.
Oh, you know what? I was going to come up with something free to give away if you say you're from the Gaffer. So
Well, a shout out to everybody that signs up, but we'll put the link in the description in the show notes. So anyone that wants to go there and gets, like, even from the podcast today, it's brilliant information that we got from you, because I don't think people think enough about the fact that they might want to sell the business. And even if they don't want to sell the business, you should be always selling.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to emphasize that you're selling it to yourself. It's just selling it is the best way to grow your business. So I'm not telling you to sell your business, and you never know when you're going to exit involuntarily.
100%. Rob, thank you very much for your time today. You've been brilliant, and we wish you every success in the future.
Thank you, Gavin. This is a lot of fun. I can talk forever, so I'm excited about it. So,
Rob, thank you.